like being on stage with the Beatles. It's awesome in here. Welcome back to More Up North, and I'm so glad Scott McAdams is here. Of course, this US Senate race is getting, well, a little crazy, and if you listen to some people on the radio or the television, you think that we're just having, well, I guess another Republican primary. Lisa, of course, said she didn't quit, and she didn't. She was fired. She's back in. Joe Miller is proving every single day that Alaska we should just put out a brochure for crazy people. Come here, you can run for Senate. I mean, it's really nuts. So Scott McAdams, sort of the voice of reason and the grown-up in this race, so I'm glad we're spending some time with him. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shannyn. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Isn't this fun?
This is great.
Oh, great crowd. People come down to the Taproot on Thursday nights.
Good times at the Taproot.
I know, they have yam fries and drinks and watch a show.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of jealous.
What could be better?
I'm kind of jealous. Wouldn't that be fun?
Absolutely.
So this race is really ramped up with Joe Miller having beat Lisa Murkowski, but when you got into this race, there weren't a lot of Democrats like, no, I won it. It's mine. They weren't all, there wasn't a big duke out for it, and you decided that this was important to get into the conversation. The odds weren't real great, but tell me about when you decided to do this.
You know, absolutely. It kind of all started in May. There was a few different events that happened down in Sitka. One was the Alaska Democratic Party decided to host its convention in Sitka. And there's a number of folks here in the audience who are Central Committee men and women, who are part of the executive committee, who are district chairs. And I had the chance to chair that convention. The state chair and the state executive director called me, asked me if I'd like to host it. I chaired the convention. I think folks appreciated Sitka. It was beautiful weather. They were in our brand new $17 million Performing Arts Center that my electorate self-selected to bond for. And it was a great convention. We got done as Democrats on time. And folks started to, which was big news, folks started to ask me, Scott, you should really think about running for statewide office. In fact, Hal Gasway, who is might be in the audience tonight, who is active in the Democratic Party, stood up after an event we had and said, Scott, I'll pay your registration fees right now if you'll run against Lisa Murkowski.
That's a little bit, yeah. That was a hell of an investment. But
absolutely.
For him to do, but I was at that convention. And I really feel like sometimes, when you're traveling out of state or you're doing media and people say, oh, you're a Democrat in Alaska. Like that's funny. Like you're and I'm like, yeah, I'm an endangered species. But then I started really looking at it, and we talked earlier with Tom Begich. This is something to be very proud of. I mean, the history of this state, of Democrats going to Washington and really building this state in a spirit where they'd work with everybody, I think is really powerful, and for you to have stepped up. So what was your opinion then of Lisa Murkowski?
I really had seen Lisa as someone who had changed over time. To be perfectly honest, there was an episode where she stood up on the floor of the United States Senate, raised her voice to become the very embodiment of keeping the cap for oil polluters set at $75 million. That was something that was a motivating factor. But there was a lot of different things. And I do have to tell you, and for those who've been part of this campaign, there was a time when I was a lonely candidate. Speaking to backyard barbecues, a lot of the people here tonight are some of the folks who were at some of those early barbecues, so I appreciate the support of all these folks. But early on, we went from community to community on air miles, talked to people. It was my belief that I'd move forward our values, really point out how Lisa had voted with the Republican minority 90% of the time, and how she changed, because I thought we needed to have a voice in the race. But I was expecting to have a civic dialogue with the senator throughout the course of the fall. Also wanted to lift up some regional issues down Southeast Alaska. I'm the chair of the Southeast Conference of Mayors. I thought this would be, I'd noticed Bill Walker was running sort of what I saw as a single issue campaign. And I thought, well, hey, maybe we can give some voice to the Southeast Alaska Hydroelectric Intertie, some of the issues that are unique to Southeast in a statewide forum. But then, of course, the 24th of August happened.
So you weren't sitting around looking up on Craigslist in D.C., ooh, furniture. Ooh, what's for rent? You weren't tweeting about the name plaque. You weren't like writing Senator McAdams on your peachy during, civics class. I mean, you were thinking, there are issues that we need to bring forward here. They're not being talked about. If I'm on this ticket, I can have conversations with Lisa Murkowski, with audiences that maybe other people will start paying attention to the issues. It wasn't so much.
Absolutely, and there was a second event that was in Sitka in May that was part of the 5 parts that led me to file on the filing deadline on June 1st. For those who are familiar with the Institute of the North's Emerging Leaders Dialogue, I'm 39. Last year, I attended at Chena Hot Springs and was a participant in the Alaska Journal of Commerce Top 40 Under 40. Met Nils Andreasen, for folks who know him. He invited me to come to this thing, and I came and saw a lot of young, talented, passionate Alaskans who were concerned about what would be next for our state. What does Alaska look like in the year 2050? How will we sustain ourselves, our communities? What will be our legacy post-Kupurk oil in this state? You know, and I'm a guy who works for a school district. I'm a public employee. I am looking at a retirement date of 2030. Well, if you look at Kupurk oil, it is in decline, and so we had some great conversations. I lobbied Nils for the rest of the year to come hold the event in Sitka, and he decided to. So there was a group of Sitkans, a group of young Alaskans in Sitka, and we had some more of these great conversations around the same time. In fact, it was the week after the passing of Walter J. Hickel. And there was some really deep and profound dialogue that went on as part of that conference. But you know, this is one thing that comes to mind. Last year when I went to a breakout session, and there were folks sitting all around the table, and the name of the breakout session was, "What if we all ran?" And here I am, you know, I'm used to being, I've been a locally elected guy since I was 31, usually the youngest guy in the room by 20 years. All of a sudden I'm 38 and I'm the elder statesman in the room. But I'm looking at these young talented Alaskans, and it's like MIT, Harvard, University of Alaska Fairbanks, you know, Yale, Harvard, University of Alaska Anchorage, sitting around the room, and 23 to 27, most of them. There's a couple old fogies in their 30s like me, but folks say, you know, young people say, well, maybe I'll run for senator.
Watch it, we were born the same year.
We were. Maybe I'll run for.
It was a very good year.
1970, that's right.
Way to go. Okay, maybe we weren't born the same year. Maybe I was born way after you. No. So, well, I think that's.
So here's the thing. So these young people, you know, were shooting for the moon, and I remember saying, you know, Nils, what if we all started to look at the governor's roster of boards and commissions, and dedicated right now that every one of us would make sure that that roster list was never empty again? What if we went back home? Some people are from Anchorage. What if we went back home, stood for a position in our community council? What if we went back to our village and stood for a position with our corporate board, or with our village, our IRA, or our traditional council? And so we had that dialogue, of course. You know, I was the guy who was an elected guy who was a local mayor, but in that same spirit, I thought, you know, I'm going to run and work to elevate the dialogue around issues that are important for Alaska and Alaska's future. But then, you know, something happened on the 24th of August, and I went from a position of believing that I would have a dialogue on the issues. I quickly realized that I would have to go and begin the fight of my life on behalf of the state that I love against a narrow set of Tea Party talking points that I think are dangerous to Alaska.
And I think a lot of Alaskans are terrified. I mean, they look at the policies that Joe Miller puts out. They look at the policies, and I think a lot of Alaskans have amnesia when it comes to Lisa Murkowski's voting record. But they're not going to vote any different. They'd be in the same party, in the same caucus, doing the same vote. And, you know, we're at a point now, I think, and when you talk about values, the Tea Party values, which are apparently now, I've got mine, you don't get yours. But in looking at this, I think that it's been very hard for Alaskans, like for you to get together with a group of young people and say, okay, we need to go participate in these avenues of government, of council, of decision making, because we have really good values. And I had someone ask me, what's a democratic value? And I was like, a good paying job where you work all day and you get paid right for it. That's a democratic value. You know?
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, a democratic value, and you look at the 20th century, a progressive value ranges back from a woman's right to vote, to a worker's right to organize, to a child's right to a free and adequate public education, to a woman's right to choose, to a person of color's right to fully engage in society with equal protection under the law as a matter of civil rights. To say that we don't have values, I think that our values are rich and deep, our tradition is strong. There's no reason for us to ever be ashamed of being Democrat.
Well, you know, and you bring that up, and I look at when you say Tea Party values, and I'm speaking for myself here, but you know, you bring up all of these issues, and I look at what we're up against right now in this country, in this state, with Joe Miller, Sarah Palin's, you know, Christine O'Donnell's. She's making Palin
Shannyn,
look smart.
But Shannyn, but I am like you. I am.
I am not a witch. Actually, can you just look at the camera and say, I am not a warlock?
I am not a Republican. No. You know what? That's a bad joke. Here's the thing. We all have got thoughtful. Here's the thing about this race. I think we're about to see a course change in retail politics in the state and in this country because I have people that I care about deeply, people that I love, who are my friends, my family, my coworkers, and my neighbors, who are Republicans, who love their community, who want to build their community, who have a lot of heart for kids, who don't want to deprive seniors of promise that America made years and years ago. These folks, they'd like to see our resources develop. Sometimes they're resource Republicans. You know, we have got a lot of thoughtful, right of center people in this state who look at what's happening in this country and they feel alone, abandoned. They don't recognize this far shift to the right and this narrow scope that is a rising tide in this country on the far right. And so, you know, I would encourage folks who are Republicans, who are right of center independents and moderates, once they come to the realization that Senator Murkowski's bid for a write-in campaign is not supported by either history or mathematics, that she cannot win, but that her candidacy is a threat to place Joe Miller in the United States Senate, I believe that all of those thoughtful Republicans in Alaska will take a hard look at our candidacy.
Right, absolutely. All right. We're gonna run to a quick break, and we're gonna be back with more Up North.